Hey yo everyone, we are back here in the custom enchanting world. If you want to see how this was set up, check out the last episode. This week, the enchantment idea we're doing comes from the Commander 33, and his idea is an enchantment that lets non-netherite items become fireproof. In some of the snapshot changes with the item stat components, we can now give something a fire resistant component. So if I say give at s wooden x, I can add this fire resistant component to it. And then I throw it in the lava and it just floats like a netherite item would. And so the idea for this enchantment is going to be you find the enchantment probably somewhere in the nether in like a bastion treasure chest. Then you can put it on whatever items you want. And when you put it on the item, it gets that fire resistant tag. And then an extra challenge for creating the pack, we need to take the grindstone into consideration. So we need to, when the player removes the enchantment, also remove that fire resistant component. So that's the overview of what we're going to be doing today. Now let's dive into the data pack. I'm back here in VS Code with the data pack that we worked on last episode. One quick note, since then the pack format has increased from 43 to 45. Other than that, everything's the same. And another note, I've now set the themes, so my data pack is this dark cyan, and the Minecraft data is this dark purple. So normally I try to walk through my thought process as I'm creating the enchantment, but that turned out to be a lot trickier with this one. Most of what's happening with this data pack is not actually in the enchantment file. There's other stuff happening in the data pack. So I've put together a template, and I'm going to walk through that now, and then show you how you can update that to have an enchantment that modifies item components. So here we have this template folder. This is its own namespace, just because there's so many parts of the data pack that it's touching. It seemed cleaner to have each one in its own namespace than having basically duplicate advancements and functions in that for all the different enchantments that modify components. Under this enchantment template, we have a few things. The enchantment is just a bare bones placeholder for now. And then where the magic happens is this advancement file. So this advancement detects when a player's inventory has changed, and you can add conditions to that. So this first condition is whether or not any of the items in their inventory have our custom enchantment on them. The second one is whether any items in their inventory have this custom tag set to true. So this will match items that have the enchantment but don't have the custom tag yet, items that have lost the enchantment through being disenchanted but have the custom tag, or items that have both. And if either of those are triggered, we run this reward function. So what this function does is scan the player's inventory to see specifically if they have an item that is enchanted but doesn't have the custom data yet, or an item that has been disenchanted but still has the custom data. So the first thing we do is we revoke the advancement so that they can get it again in the future. And then we check their inventory. So this execute if subcommand now can check any item in their inventory. So what we're saying is we're targeting the entity that called this, which would be the player that got the advancement. Container.star means any item in their inventory. We'll cover items in their hotbar and their main inventory. And then on, this is just a line wrap. On this next line, this star means we don't care what the item ID is. It can be any item. It just needs to have this sub-predicate match. And then we're checking the enchantments to see if it has our custom enchantment. And we're checking to see if it doesn't have our custom data. And if that's true, then we run this function, this add base. And then down here is basically the inverse. We check if it doesn't have the enchantment, but has the custom data. And we run this delete base function. Add base uses some data manipulation wizardry to figure out the slot ID of the item that has the enchantment but doesn't have the custom component yet. Because we can't directly manipulate player data, we're doing this data modify storage to copy the player's inventory into storage temporarily. So their inventory will still be in their inventory. There's just now a copy of all of that NBT data in storage. Then we remove from storage everything that has the custom tag set. So any items that are enchanted and already have the custom tag will be removed from storage. So it will just have items that have the enchantment and don't have the custom tag. This next line, both of these execute if statements are the same, but we're saying if we have something in the inventory that has the custom enchantment on it. This shouldn't matter. This should always be true with everything leading up till now, but just to be safe, we're only continuing these two if we have something in the inventory that has the custom enchantment on it. And this first one, we get the slot and we put that into storage. So we retrieve the slot from the first item that has the custom enchantment on it. And then this next function, we call a macro function with our storage data, which contains that slot ID that we just retrieved. This add macro function is just a single line, but it needs to be its own function because we retrieved that slot ID from the previous function. And this runs an item modifier to add the enchantment to an item in a specific slot. Before we get into the item modifiers, you can probably guess, but delete base is basically the same as add base. We've just swapped whether we're looking for the enchantment or for the custom tag. And delete macro is the same thing. It just calls an item modifier. This first item modifier just has a single function called set components. We're setting our custom tag to be true. And if we want to add anything else, we can just add it to this components object. Unsurprisingly, the delete item modifier does the opposite. We set our enchantment tag to false. Now that I've gone through the template, I'm going to show you how to update it for your custom enchantment. So the first thing we're going to want to do is to rename the folder. So I'm going to rename this flame resist. And then what you're going to want to do is rename all the references in the folder. So if you right click, you can do this find in folder, and we're going to search for the phrase inch template, which was the old folder name. And then we're going to replace it with that new name. Next, we're going to come in here to the enchantment and rename this to whatever we want the enchantment to be named. Say flame resist. And then we need to rename all of these to be flame resist. We should be able to check this out in Minecraft now. Okay, we have our flame resist item. It's not actually flame resistant yet, but the enchantment works. So now we go back here, we go into the item modifier, and we update this to say Minecraft resistant. We're going to have this add fire resistance, and then to delete a component, you just add an exclamation point to the start of the component name. And the nice thing is, because we didn't actually change the enchantment, we just changed the item modifier. And just say reload, give myself a wooden sword, give myself flame resistance, and voila, we have a flame resistant sword. So the next part to test is the grindstone. We run the wooden sword through the grindstone. It now burns up in the lava. So that is the base functionality of the enchantment. The next step is just polishing everything up. The first bit of polish is updating the in-game description to be more user-friendly. Just gonna do that. The next thing I'd like to do is update the supported items to have regular tools as well as shulker boxes, so that you could have a flame-resistant shulker box, and that way all of your items inside it would be protected if you die in the nether or something like that. So we're going to add a new folder here. Tags, item. We're going to say enchantable. I have, through the magic of editing, this list here of items we want enchanted. So we have the old tag already, and then this list of all of the shulker boxes. If we come in here and we say, alrighty, now to test this change, we are going to need to exit the world and load it back in. So now to test that worked, I'm going to give myself a shulker box and say, okay, it accepted the enchantment. I think it uses a different shader or renderer for blocks than items, so that's probably why it's not showing the glint. But yeah, I have this flame-resistant shulker box. We just grab some whatever random to put in there. We have our shulker box. It kept the flame resistance after placing and breaking it. And it still keeps flame resistance, so I thought that would just be a fun addition to this enchantment to make shulker boxes a bit safer. The only other thing to do at this point is change how this enchantment is obtained. So we want this to be something that you find in bastion treasure chests, preferably on books, so you can add it to whatever items you want. So what we're going to do now is look over in the Minecraft data. I have this bastion treasure loot table, and unfortunately there's not really an easy way to append to loot tables. So we're just going to copy this entire thing. We have loot table, chests, bastion treasure. So Minecraft, loot table, chests. Okay, so we are now going to be overriding the bastion treasure loot table. And then we're going to want a book with specific enchantments. So if we just search for set enchantments. Perfect. Here's an example of a book. So we're just going to yoink that. Add that to the end. Perfect. That's added up here to the random part of the loot table. Going to change this to, we're going to increase the weight here. Let's just set it absurdly high for a minute, and then we can set it something more reasonable in a second. Now we can just reload the world because it was a loot table, not an enchantment change. We want to give ourselves a chest with loot in it. Let's hope I typed that right. Nice. And we have our flame resistant book. So we got a couple. So we can probably turn that weight down a bit, but this means you can now get flame resistant books in bastion treasure chests. I guess the only other thing to show with this one, which I'm sure there's probably a way to avoid it, but I'm not entirely sure how, is that if you put the flame resistance on a netherite tool, which already had flame resistance, then you disenchant it, you have netherite tools that can burn up. And I'm not really sure how to avoid this other than adding a lot more checks to the item modifiers. I could possibly make it so you couldn't put the enchantment on netherite, but I don't know how that would interact with putting it on diamond and then upgrading it to netherite and all that. So for now, that's kind of a risk of this. You don't want to put flame resistance on netherite and remove it, because that will remove the flame resistance from the netherite. But yeah, thank you for watching. This is going to be kind of a backbone episode for some future enchantments that all rely on modifying item components. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the future.